The phone rang at 8:12 p.m. on December 31st, and for a second, I thought my heart forgot how to beat. I'm 68 years old, and when your phone rings at night, you don't jump up like you used to. You sit there first, you listen, you ask yourself who would still be calling you this late. Then you hope. God, you hope. I wiped my hands on the dish towel and picked it up on the third ring. "Hey, Grandma," my grandson said, loud music blasting behind his voice, laughter, someone yelling, a glass clinking. My heart lifted so fast it almost hurt. "Hi, baby," I said. "I didn't think you'd remember tonight." He laughed. "Of course we did. We're at a little New Year's thing at the house. Nothing crazy." I heard my granddaughter in the background. "Tell her we'll call back." He came back on the line. "Yeah, Grandma. We're in the middle of setting stuff up. We'll call you back in like 30 minutes, okay? When it settles down." 30 minutes? I smiled like he could see me through the phone. "That's fine. I'll be right here." "Love you," he said. "Love you more," I said, and meant it with my whole chest. The line went dead. I set the phone face up on the kitchen table, right next to the plates I'd already laid out. I'd cooked too much, like I always do. Collard greens, cornbread, a little baked chicken. Old habits don't die easy, even when the house stays quiet. 30 minutes isn't long when you're young, but when you're my age, it's enough time to remember things you didn't invite back. I sat down at the table and stared at the phone like it might get shy and stop ringing if I looked away. I thought about when they were little, when December 31st meant pajamas and cartoons and falling asleep on my couch before midnight. They used to fight over who got to sit closest to me when the countdown started. Little hands grabbing my sleeves, my knees, my heart. Back then, I was the plan. I checked the clock, 8:42. Still early, still fine. I got up and reheated the food, even though I knew I wouldn't eat much. I turned the TV on low, just for the noise. Fireworks were already going off in other cities, bright and loud and confident. I sat back down. I glanced at the phone again. Nothing. I told myself not to be dramatic. They said 30 minutes, people get busy, young people live fast. I remembered saying the same thing when my own mother used to wait up for me. I remembered promising I'd call her back, too. The clock ticked past 9. I flipped the phone over, then flipped it back, like that might help. Outside, I could hear neighbors laughing, doors opening and closing, music drifting through the cold air. Somewhere, somebody was already counting down to something new. I whispered, "Any minute now," to no one. And that's when it hit me soft but sharp. They hadn't said what time they'd call. They just said they would. I stayed at the table anyway, hands folded, phone waiting. Because when you're 68, and someone says they'll call you back on the last night of the year, you believe them. I didn't know then that 30 minutes was already gone, and the night was just getting started. By the time the clock hit 9:30, I stopped pretending I was just waiting. I was counting. Every little sound in the house felt louder. The refrigerator kicked on. The heat hummed. The clock over the stove ticked like it was doing it on purpose, just to remind me time was moving whether I liked it or not. I checked my phone again. No missed calls, no texts, nothing. I told myself, relax, it's New Year's Eve. People get distracted. Music gets loud. Phones get lost in couch cushions. I'd said the same excuses for other people my whole life. Tonight, I used them on myself. I pushed my plate away. Food barely touched. The chicken had gone cold again. I didn't bother reheating it this time. 10 o'clock. An hour had passed. I picked up the phone and held it in my hands, feeling its weight like it was something fragile. I thought about calling them back. My thumb hovered over my grandson's name. Then I stopped. I didn't want to be that grandma. The one who calls twice. The one who reminds. The one who interrupts. I'd learned a long time ago that if someone really wants to talk to you, they'll make the time. So I set the phone back down, face up, like before, and folded my hands again. Outside, the noise had picked up. Cars passing, music thumping, somebody down the block yelling, like the year already owed them something. I smiled a little, remembering when my house used to sound like that. When New Year's Eve meant too many people squeezed into a small space, kids running through the hallway, someone always spilling a drink, someone always laughing too loud. Now the house held on to silence like it was its job. 10:30. I went to the living room and turned the TV up a notch. A countdown show was on, bright lights and fake smiles, and hosts yelling about fresh starts and clean slates. They made it sound so easy. Like you could just flip a calendar and everything broken would politely fix itself. I sat back down at the table instead. Something about the kitchen felt right, familiar, honest. I started thinking about the first New Year's Eve after my husband passed. How I stayed up anyway, even though no one was coming. How I told myself I was staying awake, just in case. Just in case what? I never figured out. 11 o'clock. 2 hours now. My chest felt tight, but not in a medical way, in a remembering way, in a don't cry yet kind of way. I whispered their names out loud, like saying them might pull them closer, like the sound might travel through walls and music and distractions and land right where they were. Nothing happened. I finally flipped the phone face down. That's when I realized something I didn't like admitting. They weren't running late. They had moved on. Midnight was coming, and the world was getting louder, but my phone had gone completely quiet. I didn't know it yet, but the longest hour of my life hadn't even started. By 11:30, the waiting stopped feeling like patience and started feeling like punishment. I turned the phone face up again. I don't even remember deciding to do it. My hands just moved on their own, like muscle memory from a lifetime of hoping for people to show up when they said they would. The screen stayed dark. I pulled my chair closer to the table and wrapped my hands around my coffee mug. Even though the coffee had gone cold hours ago, the heat was still on, but I felt chilled in that quiet way that settles in when you realize you might be invisible. Outside, the noise was wild now. Fireworks cracked the sky open early, sharp pops echoing through the neighborhood. Music spilled from houses and cars. Laughter floated through the air, careless and loud. Inside my kitchen, the loudest thing was my breathing. I glanced at the clock again. 11:32. I tried to remember the last time someone kept me waiting like this. Not at a doctor's office, not at the DMV, but waiting because someone said they'd come back and didn't. It took me a second to place it. It was my mother. I was 22, running late, always busy, always promising I'd call her later. I remembered her sitting by the phone in her little apartment, probably telling herself the same things I was telling myself now. She's busy. She didn't forget. She'll call. I swallowed hard. Funny how life circles back and makes you stand in the same spot, just on the other side. 11:40. I pushed my chair back and stood up, my knees complaining the way they do these days. I paced the kitchen once, then twice. I adjusted the table runner like it was crooked, even though it wasn't. I straightened the plates that nobody had touched. I needed something to do with my hands. That's when I noticed the kids' old drawings taped to the side of the fridge. I'd never taken them down. Crayon stick figures, misspelled grandma, big hearts, little hands. They used to make those every New Year's Eve. 1 year. My grandson had written, "Next year I'll stay up with you till midnight. I promise." I smiled, then felt my throat tighten. Promises sound different when they're new. 11:50. I sat back down at the table, slower this time. My body felt heavy, like it was tired of holding things in. I rested my elbows on the table and leaned forward, staring at the phone like it was the only thing left in the room that mattered. 10 minutes to midnight. I told myself, maybe they're waiting for the countdown. Maybe they want to call right at 12. Maybe they want to say Happy New Year together. That thought held me up for exactly 8 seconds. Then reality slipped in, quiet and cruel. If you matter, people don't forget you until after midnight. The clock clicked over to 11:59. I closed my eyes. Outside, the world started counting down. I didn't know then that midnight would come and my phone would stay silent. 10, 9, 8, The voices outside were loud enough to push through my walls, through my bones, through the quiet I'd been sitting in all night. I opened my eyes and stared at the phone one more time. Still nothing. 7, 6. I thought about answering a call that wasn't coming. Thought about what I'd say if it rang right now. I'd probably pretend everything was fine. I always do. I'd say, "Hey, sweetheart," like I hadn't been sitting here for hours, like my hands hadn't gone numb from waiting. 5, 4. I looked at the clock instead. The red numbers glowed back at me, cold and exact. 3, 2. My chest felt tight, but I didn't cry. I was past tears. Tears need hope. What I felt was heavier than that. 1. The neighborhood exploded. Fireworks lit up the sky. People screamed. Music blasted. Someone nearby yelled, "Happy New Year!" like they meant it. Midnight came and went in my kitchen without making a sound. No ring. No buzz. No vibration against the table. Just me. I sat there through the noise. Hands folded, shoulders slumped, listening to everyone else welcome something new while I tried to understand what I'd just lost. It wasn't just a phone call. It was the moment I stopped being part of the night. I waited another minute, then another, because some part of me still believed they might call late and apologize, say they lost track of time, say they were sorry, say my name. None of that happened. The fireworks faded. The yelling turned into laughter, then into car doors slamming. One by one, the sounds outside softened. The night settled. I was still sitting there. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My body felt tired in a deep way, like it had been carrying something all evening and finally gave up. I reached out and touched the phone, just to prove it was real, just to prove it hadn't betrayed me on its own. I thought about when they were little and used to beg me to stay up with them until midnight. How I'd fight sleep because they wanted to see my face when the year changed. How they'd cheer even if they didn't understand what they were cheering for. Back then, midnight meant together. Now it just meant later. I pushed my chair closer to the table and rested my elbows on the wood. My head felt heavy. My eyes burned from staring too long at nothing. "I'll just rest them a second," I whispered. The kitchen light hummed softly above me. The plates were still out, the food untouched, everything frozen exactly how it had been waiting all night. I laid my head down on my folded arms, just for a moment, just until the phone rang. Because even after midnight, even after silence, some habits don't let go easy. And I didn't know yet that the waiting wasn't over. I fell asleep at the table, believing they'd still call, but morning was about to teach me something I wasn't ready to learn. The sun had barely cracked through the blinds when I finally dragged myself off the kitchen chair. My whole body felt like it had been slept on a concrete floor all night. My phone lay there on the table, silent as a grave. I kept staring at it, hoping, praying, for some miracle, some sign that my family remembered me even for a minute. But all I got was the emptiness of a room that had been quiet for hours. The kind of quiet that presses into your chest and doesn't let go. I poured myself a cup of coffee, barely tasting it, my mind wandering back to years ago. Back when 31st December wasn't just another date, it was a night of giggles, sneaky snacks, and late-night stories that went on until we could barely keep our eyes open. I could almost hear their little voices calling my name, trying to wake me up for some ridiculous game they'd invented, begging me to stay up longer, to tell them one more story, to let them win just this once. But now everything was different. Their world had changed. Parties, plans, texts, notifications, those things were louder than me, louder than all the years I'd spent making sure they felt loved, safe, and seen. I couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness mixed with this heavy ache of regret. I had been waiting, thinking that a promise meant something, that "we'll call you in 30 minutes" still had weight. But promises are cheap when life spins faster than you can keep up. I walked to the window, staring out at the street, watching neighbors hang lights and laugh with their families. I realized, painfully, that the little moments I once held so dear, those moments I thought were endless, had quietly shifted away from me. Time hadn't changed for them, but I had changed along with the quiet hope I carried for them. And the truth, I didn't recognize this version of my own life anymore. I sank back into my chair and ran my hands over my face. The phone sat there, lifeless, mocking me in its silence. And suddenly, it hit me the years I had spent trying to make sure they had everything they wanted, everything they needed, hadn't guaranteed even this one night. This one last chance to just hear their voices before the year ended. I felt a tear slip down my cheek. A quiet acknowledgement that some parts of the past are gone, and no amount of waiting or hoping can bring them back. And then, as if to remind me of the cruel way life works, a sound came from the hallway. My heart jumped, thinking it was them, thinking they had finally come to their senses. But it wasn't. Just a stray newspaper hitting the door. Just the hollow echo of a silence I couldn't escape. I slumped in my chair, staring at the phone, realizing in a gut-punch way that time had moved on for them, and I was left behind, not forgotten out of malice, but out of distraction, priorities, and life moving faster than anyone can control. And then, in that quiet moment, the phone rang, my heart leapt, but the number on the screen made my blood run cold. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the number on the screen. I froze, hand hovering over the phone like it was a bomb. It wasn't their usual number, it was one I didn't recognize. I swallowed hard, telling myself, maybe it's someone else, maybe it's not important. But some part of me, that stubborn hope that had kept me awake all night, whispered, "Pick it up." I answered, my voice cracking before I could even speak. "Hello?" Silence. Then a shaky, distant voice spoke. "Grandma, it's me. So sorry." And just like that, my chest tightened. My knees went weak. It was their voice, but not quite. Not the same warmth I remembered. The line wavered, and the voice continued. We didn't realize. We didn't mean to. The party, everything got out of hand." I felt my anger and sadness collide. "You didn't mean to what? Forget the one night that mattered? Forget me?" My voice was sharper than I intended, but the years of holding back, of waiting, of hoping they all spilled out in that one moment. "I know, Grandma," the voice trembled. "We've changed. We didn't mean to hurt you. We got busy. Everything's different now." Different. Yeah, that was the word. Everything had changed. Their priorities, their schedules, their lives, and somewhere in all of it, I had become a background character. I remembered the little kids who ran to me on every 31st, the games, the stories, the laughter. I remembered how we used to sit together, counting down the minutes to midnight, feeling the magic of being together. And now they were grown-ups who barely had time for a call. I took a deep breath, tried to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. "I get it," I whispered. "I really do. I wish you remembered what really matters sometimes. Not the parties, not the noise, just the people who love you. Don't forget that. Life's too short for everything else." They stayed silent for a moment, and I could hear them breathing, probably realizing the weight of what they'd lost without even noticing. I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that they finally reached out. Sorrow that it took this long for them to even think about me. I ended the call slowly, letting the silence settle over me like a soft blanket. I walked to the window, looking at the last stars of the year fading into dawn. I thought about the years, the love, the laughter, and the memories that no party or text could replace. I thought about the fact that people change, and sometimes we have to let go of the past to hold on to our own dignity and peace. I sat there for a long time, letting the new year begin quietly in my heart. And even though the night had hurt, even though the call came late, I realized something important. Life isn't about waiting for someone else to remember you. It's about remembering yourself, your worth, and the love you've given along the way. And as the first light of the year touched my face, I whispered to myself, "This is my year, my life, and nobody will make me wait in silence again."